We get into the winners and losers of the 2026 NFL Draft next on Beyond the Locker Room. Another spring has gone by, and another NFL Draft is in the books. We get into the winners and the losers. Obviously we'll start with the Raiders and what they did as the first pick overall. I mean, they finally got themselves a quarterback. They've been needing a quarterback forever. And I think, I'll say this with the Raiders. I'll put it this way: getting Fernando Mendoza, from Indiana. He showed his stuff in the championship, game in the championship rounds. In this case, in the Final Four, if so to speak. They've been looking for a quarterback forever. And the good thing is, for once, even though they picked up Cousins, and I was like, where are we going with this, fellas? Where are we going with this? And I was a little concerned, and now true, Cousins in this case has a lot of incentives in his contract. He's obviously, kind of like, handing the torch over to Mendoza. But it's about time they turn the page. The Raiders have been notoriously always looking for some old veteran quarterback they think will actually save them and stuff like that. And quite honestly, even Brady threw his hat in there as part owner, wanted to get in the mix and say, hey, man, if you want, I can come back. I'm not doing much, just this broadcasting gig. But I've got no problem coming back and playing. Like, dude, you're approaching 50 years old. Or if you're not, you might be 50 already. Like, enough time, man. Chill in the booth, make the big ton of money you get with Fox, and just be done with it. So at least now they are now turning the page over with the coaching staff, with everything. They kind of finally get into the modern day of 2026. That franchise, it's sad because even though I'm a Steelers fan, and I love my Seahawks, I always got a soft spot for the silver and black, and I've always enjoyed watching how they get there, and their get down. Just win, baby. But it's been rough for the last decade or so for the Raiders with all sorts of stuff on and off the field. But this was the pick. There was no way to blow this. And it now makes it interesting to see what the AFC West looks like. You can make an argument the AFC West has the best quartet of quarterbacks in their division. Because, yeah, you can say so. Because even though the AFC Central obviously has, Joe B., Lamar, but then you still have Cleveland with their issues and Pittsburgh. Sorry, we'll get them in a second. So no, I wouldn't say so. We go to the Miami situation and the AFC East. No, you go through the different divisions and say, you know what, with Bo Nix, obviously Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, obviously, me already. If you listen to my pod here, I'm not a huge fan of, but I gotta respect the talent. And then you throw in now, Mendoza. If he plays anything like he played in college, that might be the best foursome right now from a division standpoint in the league. Give me your thoughts down below if you think there's another division I'm thinking of that might be a little bit better when you think of the four potential starting quarterbacks on the team. I know Kirk Cousins will be starting the year, but let's face it, Kirk Cousins might not end the year as the starter. That's all I'm saying. Anyways, good on the Raiders. They finally, they're kind of moving in the right direction, as a franchise. They picked up, the DB trading Stooks from Arizona in the second round. They got the edge in this case here, K'Ron Crawford from Auburn. In round 3 and so on and so forth. I'm not going to go through every one of their picks, but you can definitely see where they're trying to fill out, trying to get on the defensive end, on the defensive side of the ball. That has been pretty atrocious as well too. So good on the Raiders, fantastic. So let's get into the winners, for this breakdown. The Eagles might have done it again. I think the Eagles, they find ways. See what I like with Philadelphia. And I talk about this offline, even on the podcast. I always hear, in this case, Kenny, in this case, when we discuss it on Basketball Rewind, he mentions this from a basketball perspective, but it's for any sport that has a draft. If you have a guy in mind, don't wait around and say, well, just hope he just falls to us. Just hope he comes down here like rain to us and stuff like that. No, man, get to it and actually go in there and go after the man or the woman, depending on who you drafted. Go for that person. And I appreciate the fact that Philadelphia doesn't wait around. They make aggressive moves prior and on draft day. They made another one again to get up, in this case, to get, Mekhi Lemon, the wide receiver from USC, at the 20th pick. Now, what makes this interesting is that as, the word is you're watching the broadcast, Lemon seems to be on the phone talking to the Steelers. And it's like what? And they literally jump ahead of the Steelers to pick him. And you're sitting here going like, what are we doing, Pittsburgh? What are we doing, man? What are we doing? I'll get them in a second. I got a piece of rant from my Steelers. But, Philadelphia, man, they go in there, they go and take care of business. They pick him up. They get Eli Stowers, in this case, a tight end from Vanderbilt in the second round. Markel Bell, from Miami. And if you watch the Canes this year, they were fantastic, in the third round. So, and I won't go into the other ones, but you can see what they're looking to do here. They're building up the offense as much as possible. Obviously moving off of A.J. Brown, and I think they're kind of high enough for that core. We'll see what they do from the quarterback, we'll see what's going on there. I'm not sure what happened there, but we'll see what happens in the future. That's going to be an interesting discussion there. But, so they definitely wanted to make sure they had enough weapons around here because they think they're moving off some folks, obviously in the future. Obviously, Brown is one of them. They reinforce the offensive line, so they're making sure they still keep that offensive line potent, with Bell, and once again, they got draft capital and they got themselves, in this case, a pass rusher again to kind of build that up to make sure that if one of their pass rushers go down, they have depth in this case, for Jonathan Greenard in this case with the 98th pick. So they are building, not just on the skilled positions, but they're finding ways to make sure that when they get later rounds, they're building up those two lines, the offensive defensive line. And Philadelphia continues to, stockpile of talent, man. That's the key, man. And Philadelphia right now is probably the best in the business at doing it. Texans right now might be, we'll see. I think Texans, picking up the defensive tackle there for Ohio State, was a nice pickup there. McDonald, something to watch for them. I think Houston, that defense is already fantastic. It just adds for that. So that's something to keep in mind with Texas. With Houston, as they're going to be a force to deal with in this AFC. The Jets, Jets. Well, it can't get much worse for New York. I made a joke with a guy the other day at the golf course. And I said, I don't know. He was referring to the Jets. I guess he was talking about the Jets, the New York Jets. I said, based on what you said, I was hoping you were saying the Winnipeg Jets because, man, as a New York Jets fan, it's been tough. But, they get the edge rusher, in this case, from Texas Tech, David Bailey in the first round, and then also, too, with the second pick. And then, D'Angelo Pons they get from Indiana. Nice pickup there. The cornerback there in round 2 with the 50th pick. So, they're definitely trying to bolster that defense, and, that's good for the Jets because, obviously, they can use help anywhere at this point. So, I think starting with the defense is always a great start of things and getting that sorted out, after they fired, so I like what the Jets have done. I think in this case, Robert Saleh, that's, my mind went blank. Yeah, Saleh, who's obviously in San Francisco again, but he had the defense actually in a nice spot before he left. It fell apart. That's good to see with the Jets standpoint. So that's kind of some of the winners I see here. I will say now, let's get to it. Let's get to it, folks. The Pittsburgh Steelers. Such a mighty and well-respected franchise in a matter of 12 months is gone. They just, I don't know what happened. And this is probably why Tomlin left, because he could see the writing on the wall. We're going to bring back this man for another year. I don't know why we keep bringing this man back. I don't know what the deal is. First thing, we ended up getting a coach. For all the folks that want to hate on Tomlin, we ended up getting, as I said before, the doppelganger. He's just the white guy version of him in this case here, and Mike McCarthy. I don't understand what we're doing here. It's like, okay, that, I thought we'd get some young, fresh blood in here and kind of think the game differently. We get Mike freaking McCarthy. Then we said, which obviously means who is coming back. Now, I have the mindset that number 8 in this case, he could go at the pasture as far as I'm concerned. He is retired. He was retired as far as I'm concerned last year. He just didn't know it. But it seems like they want to bring back the band, as they like to say. And because of that, we decided to go and pick a quarterback in the 3rd round. In this case, Drew Aller, from Penn State. Now I'm sitting here going like myself, Penn State had a rough year overall, fired the coach and stuff like that. But like, I'm just thinking to myself, like, when are we going to take quarterbacking seriously like every other team in the league? Like, we treat quarterback as if in this case is like, oh, it's like a hobby. Oh, yeah, we'll get one of them when we're ready. Like, no, folks. It's the most important position on the field. And we treat it like it's nothing. Now, I will say this. As I mentioned before, going back to the Philadelphia move, we were picking at 21. Philadelphia comes in and says, oh, I'll scoop that up, thank you. And takes the receiver over us, in this case from USC. Now, we end up, in this case, going offensive tackle. Now, in this case here, we pick, Max and Hanshaw, in this case, if I'm pronouncing his name right, I believe I am. You never have enough offensive line help. So from Arizona State, Sun Devil, it's a safe pick. I got no problem with it. I do wonder a little bit, if it's a bit of a reach. If there wasn't anything else we can use, because we could fill a few spots I can think of off the top of my head. But that is one spot we can use some help and some depth in. So be it. They pick up Bernard, the wide receiver from Bama, in round 2 with the 47th pick. I still feel, the thing that concerns me is, you look at even their first 5 picks, they picked Everett, in this case from Georgia, the cornerback, in round 3, fine. And they picked Dunker from Iowa, the guard. So more depth on the front line. What I don't see on here, and I don't understand why I don't see this on here, is I see no pass rushers. Now, last I checked from the Steelers, what I seen here, TJ Watt out here walking around with one lung, and we hanging on for dear life. Highsmith ain't getting any younger. Hayward is pretty much almost like Methuselah, and we ain't get no one on the defensive line. Nobody. No fresh blood, it looks like. 5 picks in. And I'm sitting there going, I will see what happens today. I'm sitting there and shaking my head like, I don't know. I don't know where we going. And the fact in this case, you let Philadelphia come in there and swoop that receiver from you. It like we're asleep at the wheel. And Pittsburgh is notorious. Just as I said, Philadelphia is one way, being aggressive and picking the guy they want and going after them. Pittsburgh is the exact opposite. In the same state, and the exact opposite. Pittsburgh, I don't even know why they show up for the draft. Even though it's hosted here, so I guess they had to. Shout out to the Steelers fans that was out there supporting the draft, man. And you see the pictures? Ridiculous. Steel City, well done. But I don't understand Pittsburgh. Like, they sit there and they have a draft pick, and they feel like it's like there's some rules against them for actually making trades, making moves, moving up, moving down, acquiring more picks. No, Pittsburgh's like, well, we get the pick. Wherever the pick is, 21st, 18, 16, 7, we just pick what we have and we go home. That's it. I think I remember Bomani Jones mentioning last year or the year before, I think it's the year when we picked up Pickett, about moving up in the draft. And he said that the Steelers in like 40 years, at least over 40 years, have never traded their first round draft pick. Never traded, never moved up, never moved down, never added picks, nothing. All the Steelers do is just literally just make their pick. That's it. I don't know what to make of this franchise at this point. It's on the cruise control, man. It's like, actually, it's like a deep coma, quite honestly. I don't know how they get out of it. And I mean, I'm hoping like, this is the sad part. I don't say this as a Steelers fan or any fan of any team. You never want to say this, but you almost have to say it in this case to put us out of our misery. The Steelers almost have an atrocious season for things to really change. But the Steelers are going to go in like usual and be 10-7 or 11-6 or 9-8, just hovering around the playoffs or make the playoffs barely. They're not going to change. We're going to see a mediocrity, and we don't want to get out of it, man. But anyways, that's my rant on the Steelers. I think in this case here, the term I think that I would use for the Steelers is lack of urgency. That's what I would say, lack of urgency. Other ones you got to question, maybe are losers. I don't know. That's a bit of a strong term. The Rams made some questionable things by drafting Ty Simpson. That was interesting, But here's the thing. They drafted Ty Simpson, and they have arguably a Hall of Fame quarterback too, and is a lot more productive at this stage of his career than Rodgers is, and they're still drafting a quarterback. What the hell are you doing, Pittsburgh? They're still drafting a quarterback. Now, you would think that a team like the Rams, who are kind of knocking the doorstep here, that they might actually add some stuff in the defensive line because they could use some help on there because they're getting, my Seahawks were ripping in the shreds. So I don't know, what that looks like, for them. But like, I wish you luck, because I ain't sure it's gonna get much better for your Rams against Seattle this coming year. I don't know, man. That was an interesting one. That was interesting. I mean, I understand you have to look for the future. They're kind of the opposite of the Steelers, where they are actually looking for the future, maybe one stage earlier than they need to. Steelers, in this case, are late stages of actually looking for the future on their side of things. Arizona, I don't know. I have no clue what the heck they're doing. With the quarterback situation, they have no clear idea what they're doing. I don't know. I'll move on from them. They're just picking dudes, I think, in this case, what Arizona's doing. Minnesota. Minnesota's an interesting one. So Minnesota took a receiver. No, sorry, was it a receiver? Hang on. They took a player that had a foot injury not once, but twice. Yeah, they took the defensive tackle, in this case, Caleb Banks, in the first round. And he actually had his foot, I think his foot was broken once, but twice. You have to ask yourself, from a Minnesota standpoint, like, for the first round pick, really? Might be a bit of a reach, a bit dicey. If Minnesota, we'll see what the Purple People Eaters do. That one was a little questionable. Could be questionable. Last one I would wonder a little bit was, Frisco. Their picks. Let's go back here. Frisco's picks were a little interesting too, actually. And I'll say with San Francisco. San Francisco's, in my mind, win now mode, because they got a lot of people getting paid a lot of money. They got McCaffrey, they got Purdy. Obviously, they got rid of the receiver last year. But they paid some dudes in this case. They paid some dudes, and at some point you guys say, hey, you know what? We have to get on this and move forward and see what we do, and kind of move forward and get some younger blood in here to do so. I'm not saying they have it, but no picks in the first round, because they made a lot of different trades and lost their pick. Round 2, they picked up for the Jets this case, Dejon Stribling, wide receiver from Ole Miss. And if you see Chambliss and those boys, he's a nice receiver. I'm not gonna lie. He gives him a lot of speed, which I think San Francisco could use a little bit more of. So I do like that. But with Samuel and Ayuk gone, they needed that. So that's fine overall. And I think you actually will contribute immediately. So I have no issue on that. Round 3, from the Browns, they picked Romello Height, the edge from Texas Tech. So they got some pass rushing, which they need to have as well too. You know what, may have been a little too harsh for San Francisco overall. Because on number 90, the number 90 pick from the Texans, from Miami, they picked up Kalen Black for the running back for Indiana, and now Black and some people are kind of a polarizing pick for some folks. People think he's a bit of a system player. He's actually almost 25 years old. As a running back, he's a bit small, especially for running backs. Running backs are always on the board, man. Even at 90, man, there's plenty of running backs you can get at that point. So that's a bit, obviously, maybe, I don't know, maybe they're looking to kind of use him as a scat back out of the backfield. Perhaps that's it, knowing how their offense is with Shanahan. They like to kind of whip it around, sling it around a lot bit to the running back. So perhaps that's the role he'll play more for San Fran. So, so we'll see what they do for the rest of the day today. But it's a mixed bag for San Fran. I wouldn't call them a loser per se. That might be a bit tough for them. So that's my thoughts on the draft. Seattle doing Seattle things, man. We just building up. Get the defense right. Seahawks picked Jadarian Price. My apologies for the running back for Notre Dame. So that's good to have there to kind of get some more depth there. Bud Clark from TCU, in this case in the second round. And then afterwards, there was safety there. So once again, building up the secondary a bit more. And Julian Neal, the cornerback, secondary again in Arkansas in the third round. So at pick 99. So Seattle, once again, building out where they need to build out. And that team was fairly young already, so I like where we're going with that as a Seahawks fan. Good luck to your Rams. Good luck to your Niners on that front. Arizona, well, adios. I don't know what y'all are doing. But anyways, the NFL draft is still going as we speak. I might be doing podcasts next week. It still might be going. Anyways, I'll leave it there, guys. Thank you so much for listening. As always, you know where to find me. You can find me obviously on X. You can find me, talking about these Raptors and other stuff. We'll get to them in another pod. So X, Facebook, IG, as well as Blue Sky. You can also find me, of course, right here on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. I appreciate the subscribes, guys. It's for free. Don't get a lot of things for free. This is one of them. Anyways, guys, thank you so much. Take care. Be safe out there. Peace.